Today I'm going to show you how to do a provisional crochet cast on. For this you will need a crochet hook, your knitting needles, whichever needles you're going to use for your project, a bit of waste yarn or scrap yarn, and the yarn for your project, and some scissors. So to start, you're going to use your scrap yarn, your waste yarn, and you're going to make a slip knot. And you're going to hold your crochet hook in your dominant hand, put the loop on the hook, and then you're just going to take one of your needles for now. You only need one needle. Get that tail out of the way. And you cross your crochet hook over the top of your needle. You loop your yarn around your hook. Pull it through your slip knot. Now you're going to cross your yarn back around to the underside of your knitting needle so it's not crossing over the top anymore. And you're going to do it again. You're going to crochet again. So you're going to pick up your working yarn, pull it through the loop on your crochet hook, pass the yarn back around the needle, up another bit of yarn, pull it through the loop on your crochet hook, pass the yarn back around, and you want to keep, you don't want your loops to be too tight. You want to still be able to move them up and down the needle, but you don't want them to be too loose and messy. And then you're just gonna create as many stitches as are called for in your pattern. So for this tutorial, I'm just going to do a couple more stitches just to show you the motion. Okay. Now when we have the number of stitches cast on that we need for our pattern, you are just going to chain one loop. And then you can cut the yarn. It doesn't have to be a long tail. Cut it pretty short. And then you are just going to draw that yarn through that last loop to secure it. Now, when you go to knit, your stitches are going to be turned the opposite way from how they would normally sit. So you're going to take your main yarn for your project, and you're just going to start knitting, but you're going to be knitting through the back loop. And you just knit through the back loop all the way across the row. And there, that's your first row done. And now you can just knit as normal. So I'll be doing stockinette stitch, so I'll actually be purling. And you may have to tug that tail a little bit just to make sure it's secure. If you want, you can tie these two tails together just to keep them together and out of the way, but you don't have to. And so you can see you have your first two rows, and then you have this row of crochet chains along the bottom. So I'm just going to keep knitting. And then I'll show you how to undo your provisional cast on so that you can reclaim those live stitches. So let's say I've finished my project and I'm ready to bind off. I just bind off as usual, or however calls for in your pattern. You might want to keep those stitches live if you're going to be joining them to the cast on edge, whatever your pattern calls for. Okay, so our pattern is done. We're going to snip that yarn. Draw it through the loop. Okay, so now we're all done and we want to go back and pick up these stitches here at the cast on edge. You're going to want to start from where you ended your cast on. So where your main yarn is joined and where you have that one little chain stitch there. And if it's not too tight, you can just untie it. You can also just snip it. I'm just going to snip it. I often tend to use the same yarn for multiple provisional casts on. They reuse the waste yarn, so you might not want to snip it if you're planning on doing that. But okay. So now you can see your first white stitch there, where the waste yarn is coming out. And you're going to want to take your needle, just one needle, and pick up that stitch and pull the waste yarn through. And you can just start undoing your crochet chain, go into that next white stitch, pull on the waste yarn, and you'll see the crochet loops just start undoing themselves. So pick up your stitch, pull the waste yarn, pop that loop out, pick up your next stitch, pull that yarn. You don't want to pull too fast or you'll unravel too many stitches, which if you're using a slippery yarn can be a problem. You don't want to drop any stitches. So you want to pick up that white stitch, pull out the waste yarn, and just keep doing that until you've picked up all of your stitches. And there you have it. Now you can either knit up from these stitches or you can seam them to the bind off or whatever you want to do with them.